Have you been scared out of eating one of the most important sources of nutrients? And that's fish. We hear that pregnant women shouldn't eat canned tuna or even very much fish at all. So where did this all come from? I mean, I understand the theory. Mercury is in coal, which is burned to make electricity, and then goes up into the clouds, and eventually it winds up in the ocean, and there it's taken up by plankton and makes its way up the food chain into fish. Now, I've heard health gurus telling people to avoid fish and to instead take pills and protein powders. But let's take a closer look. Is there evidence that we're dropping like flies because of the mercury in fish? Now, I agree that mercury is a toxin that we have to watch out for. Watch my video on mercury where I talk about this topic in greater detail. But it's kind of like the health gurus that tell you to avoid fruit because of the fructose. In nature, fructose, as it's packaged in fruit, is not in a form that's harmful for most of us. Now, there is evidence the mercury and other toxins from fish are exaggerated. Now, do I recommend that you avoid eating whale sandwiches and porpoise shish kebabs? Yes, these sea mammals can be very high in mercury, so I wouldn't eat those. Now, part of the scare about mercury in fish occurred when the EPA issued the reference dose for mercury, which had a 10-fold margin of safety built into it. So people, including many of the green groups, started using this reference dose as the toxic dose. But the toxic dose, remember, is 10 times higher. It's called the benchmark dose lower limit. So we may get warnings for a dose that's only 1/10 of the potentially toxic dose. The other issue is the selenium content of fish. Selenium is plentiful in many ocean fish species, but most of us are unaware of its protective role against mercury. Selenium has a high binding affinity for mercury. Studies on digestion show that very little mercury is bioavailable and so not absorbed when selenium is present. This makes it hard for the body to absorb mercury separately. Simply put, when selenium binds to mercury, then mercury is no longer free to bind to anything else, like the nervous system tissue. Now, based on this premise, fish with more selenium than mercury would be safe to eat, whereas fish with more mercury than selenium may be unsafe. Using these criteria, most varieties of ocean fish would be safe to eat. And a study conducted by the Energy and Environmental Research Center and the EPA found that 97% of the freshwater fish from lakes and rivers in the western United States are also safe to eat. But then you ask, what about dioxins and PCBs? Now, these chemicals may increase the risk of cancer. But the highest dietary sources of PCBs and dioxins are not fish, but beef, chicken, pork, dairy, and vegetables. Fish constitute only 9% of the dietary intake of these chemicals. Now, analysis was done where if you take 100,000 people and then consume farm-raised salmon, it would cause an excess of 24 cancer deaths. And if you ate wild salmon, it would be 8 excess cancer deaths. Now, if you're consuming the wild or farm salmon, you would also have 7,125 fewer coronary heart disease deaths in those same 100,000 people. So overall, it's much safer. So let me summarize. Selenium protects against mercury toxicity, and 16 of the 25 highest dietary sources of selenium are ocean fish. If a fish contains a higher level of selenium than mercury, then it's probably safe to eat. Most species of commonly eaten fish in the United States have more selenium than mercury. The only ones that might be a problem are mako shark and possibly swordfish and tilefish, which pretty much have an even ratio. Now, fish are not a significant source of PCBs and dioxin when we compare it to meat, dairy, or vegetables. The benefits of eating fish regularly far outweigh the potential risks, which are negligible according to the best evidence. Pregnant mothers and young children should not avoid fish because of mercury. A large study done of pregnant women eating 12 fish meals per week of ocean fish had children that were healthy and developed normally up to age 9. So as we go forward with continued depletion of our agricultural land of minerals and the expansion of food processing that removes omega-3 fatty acids and fat-soluble vitamins, we need fish now more than we ever have. This is Dr. G. Thanks for watching.